This question says, determine whether the equation is linear or not, then graph the equation by finding and plotting ordered pair solutions. There's nothing wrong with right now going into Desmos and putting that equation into Desmos. Linear means that your line is straight. Not linear means it's not straight. Okay, so linear, think line. All right. When we see y equals 2x minus 3, what does that look like in Desmos? Let me now new share Desmos. All right, so that equation was y equals 2x minus 3. All right. What you need to do to graph for MyMathLab is find 2 points. You can either do it through Desmos or through just algebra, right? The way we were doing it last class. I want you to find points that are very easy, like small numbers so that they're close to the origin 0, 0, but also whole numbers if possible, right? So it looks like -1, -5 is a point, and you can always check that. -1, -5. And they will tell you the axis, or sorry, the intercepts, which we will talk about today. Intercept means it's crossing the x-axis or the y-axis. So 0, -3 would also be on this line. Okay, so you have gone to Desmos, you found your 2 points, or you just did algebra. You put in 0 for x and you got out a -3 for y. You put in -1 for x, you got a -5 out for y, okay? Then you're going to go back to your homework. We said it's linear, and then we're going to use the graphing tool to graph the equation. When you're just plotting points, you can enlarge the graph or not. It does help. I mean, I have old eyes, so it might just be me. It does help to enlarge the graph. I think I now have to share that tiny little window, yeah? Do you guys see the window within the window? Can you see the graph as I enlarged it? Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so we chose the points. -1, -5, right? And 0, -3. So -1, -5. Ooh, sorry, let's clear the graph, okay? You want to start up here. It defaults to this arrow button. You want to pick the line button if it's a linear equation, okay? Here just means you want a solid line. Below it means a dashed line. We're not really going to get into dashed lines in this course. Dashed lines have to do with greater than or equal, greater than or less than. Okay, so you want it always a solid line. And if it's a linear equation, select this one. Do you see how on that little, on that line, there are 2 points? That means, and they don't tell you this, but that means that you can only plot 2 points. Okay, don't try to plot 3 points on MyMathLab. They will think you're plotting a third point. No, sorry, they will not think you're plotting a third point. They'll think you're plotting a second line. So that will mess you up. There are 2 points on there, so only put 2 points on the line you chose. Then you can see that this is kind of trying to help you find the points, and then up in the upper right, it will tell you where you are. So this is at 10, 10. The origin is 0, 0. We said -1, -5, right? So maybe that's what I want my first point to be. And then my second point was, oh, I don't remember. But you can kind of put it there and look back down at your paper if you did the math. 0, -3. So take that second point, edit coordinate, take it down to 0. Edit coordinate, sorry. Oh, all right, it wants you to type it, -3. Submit. All right, so we have 1, -5, 0, -3. Save. Okay, if you want to similar question. All right, last attempt. This is still linear because I know it's a line. And if I wanted to graph And I said it was a line through 0, 0, and then through 2, 4. You can also clear your line, clear all objects, or make a line, delete just the selected object. So if you liked part of your line, you can select that object and just hit delete. Oh, it deletes the whole thing. All right, so clear or delete if you need to start over. Good. Again, at the beginning, they just asked you to plot points. 1.5, -2. I think it helps to expand this. No, 1.5, -2. Yikes. 1.5, -2. Now you see the truth. I'm not even good at this. No. Should we make sure? Oh, what is these arrows? -2, 1.5. Okay, so you can also count over and just do it with the arrows on your keyboard. Hit save. All right. What else? All right. Is this linear or not? Yes, it's still linear because x is not squared, right? It's not raised to any power except 1. It's just 1/2 times x. Put that into Desmos, or again, you can make a table. Sorry, I'm going back to this one. So we can put it into Desmos and see the graph, or you can make a table and you can say when x is 0, y is -3, right? Because 1/2 times 0 minus 3 is a -3. If x is 1, then, well, that's not a fun one. If x is 2, then y is -2, right? And those are your 2 points. Remember, you only ever want to do 2 points. Here we have x squared plus 4. Remember, if your x is squared, it's not going to be a line, but you can check that. You can check that on Desmos. We said x squared plus 4 is not a linear equation, okay? Go back to, well, I guess, look at what your points might be. 0, 4 would be 1 point, and then 2, 8 would be another point. All right, make sure that when this is called a parabola, make sure you know the bottom or the top of your parabola. Okay, that's called the vertex. So your vertex here is 0, 4. Go back to your homework. It is not linear because that's not a straight line, it's a curved line. Check it. And then they're going to ask you to graph by plotting ordered pair solutions. It looks like this one. You can zoom in, not very far, but somewhat, right? And see that that is opening up and it's moving, it's above the x-axis. Good. All right, what else do I need to cover for my math lab? Is anything coming up for you guys? Don't put 3 points down. Feel free to delete everything. Okay, and then today we are covering intercepts. So in 3.3, when it says graph using intercepts, you have to choose the intercepts as your points, okay? You only get 2-point chances, and they each have to be the x-intercept and the y-intercept. Don't plot a different point because my math lab will mark you wrong even though you graphed the correct line, okay? And ask me questions or just send me my send me a screenshot or an ask my instructor of the question that you're stuck on, or even if you're not stuck on it, they keep marking it wrong, but you're not really wrong. It's just like some discrepancy between my math lab and what you're doing, and then I can come in and give you credit for it. Sound good? All right, so that is my math lab, but definitely ask me questions because it can be frustrating And I want to make sure you guys aren't wasting, I'm not wasting your time with the technology side of it any more than like we always are with honor lock and everything else, right? All right, so 3.1 and 3.2, we've been plotting points. Each point has an X value and a Y value. When you substitute the X value and the Y value of part of your line into the equation, that means the equation will always be true, right? Or if you have an X and a Y value that works for your equation, that will be a point on the graph of the equation. That's the relationship, right? Each one of those points that we were graphing in my math lab or that were showing up on Desmos meant that that XY value was true for that equation. Good? So today we're talking about intercepts. The X intercept or intercepts, there could be more. The x-intercept and the y-intercept of the graph of an equation or a line, okay? So x-intercept means where the graph crosses the x-axis, right? So this is our x-axis. It goes forever to the left and to the right. It is a horizontal line. And then here is our y-axis. Good. If we just had a line, this line, okay? The points where we are crossing the y-axis, this is my y-intercept, because to intercept means to cross, okay? And then maybe over here, where it crosses the x, that will be my x-intercept. Make sense? So it just means where my line is crossing x and y, and it is perfectly possible. We saw in Desmos moments ago, it is possible that you have a parabola that has two x-intercepts, or you have two y-intercepts, okay? So in this case, these would both be my x-intercepts. Now, if you're not graphing it, if you only have the equation and they ask you to find the x-intercept, you let y equal 0 in your equation and then you find x, okay? So my y0, find x. That will give me my x-intercept because every point on the x-axis is where y is 0, right? Every point on the y-axis is where x is equal to 0. Write that down. So everywhere on the y-axis, x has a 0 value. So every point, this is going to be maybe 0, negative, or sorry, that's the y-axis. So this will be maybe 0, positive 1, right? This is maybe 0, negative 2. So all of my x's are 0 on the y-axis. X is 0 because it is on the y-axis. All right. Conversely, when we're talking about the x-axis, all of the y's are 0, right? So maybe this is, you can't put y first, you have to put x first. Maybe this is 3, 0, right? Over here, maybe we have negative 4, 0. So all my y's are 0 on the x-axis. Y equals 0. So you'll have the points like 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0. Good. Up here, x is 0, so you'll have the point 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 5. That's the difference. If it's on the y-axis, x is 0. If it's on the x-axis, y is 0. Your y-intercept will always have a x value of 0. Your x-intercept will always have a y value of 0. So Example 1 asks us to graph 4 equals x minus 3y by finding and plotting the intercepts. So they don't want you to just choose any point, right? When we were making the table in previous classes, we were just using any small point for our x value and then finding the xy. So this is what we were doing before. You don't need to write this down. And our equation is 4 equals x minus 3y, right? We were doing this and we were just saying when x is 1, 4 equals 1 minus 3y. So that means 3 equals negative 3y. So that means negative 1 equals y, right? So then my point would be 1, negative 1, if I did the math correctly, right? That's what we do when you want a table and you're just choosing whatever x values you want and you're plotting 2 of them in my math lab. That is not what we're doing if they ask for the intercepts, okay? If they've asked for your intercepts, that means you need to do 2 things, okay? You need to find your x-intercept, and it will, there's no 2 things you need to do if you have 2 x-intercepts, okay? It will just become clear. You need to find your x-intercept, and you need to find your y-intercept. It said to find an x-intercept, y equals 0, okay? For my x-intercept, y is 0. For my y-intercept, what is going to be equal to 0? X is equal to 0, okay? So we're using that equation. Instead of making a table, we're just taking this and saying that y is 0, all right? So that means 4 minus x minus 4 minus x, 4 equals x minus 3y. Now that becomes 4 minus equals x minus 3. Instead of y, I'm putting in a 0 with parentheses, just to be clear, okay? 4 equals x minus 3 times 0. That means that is now 4 equals x minus 0. 4 equals x, okay? What you're looking for is a coordinate point. So that coordinate point is just like this, right? X is now 4, if I did my math right. Y has to be 0 because we're talking about the x-intercept. Basically, x is 4 when, right? So we're going back to this, when I made y 0. X is 4 when y is 0. We're going to do the same thing with the, to find the y-intercept, we're going to do the same equation, but now we're replacing x with 0 instead of the y with 0. So it's still 4 equals x minus 3y, but now it's 4 equals 0 minus 3y. So 4 equals negative 3y. To get rid of that 3, or to get rid of the negative 3, I'm going to divide by negative 3. So negative 4/3 equals y. Good. And that's just the same as up here. Negative 4/3 is y when x is 0. So in XY format, that's going to be 0, negative 4/3. All right. And let's just look in Desmos. It was, you can put it in any format in Desmos. It was 4 equals, that's a perfectly fine way to put it into Desmos, x minus 3y. Good. They said my x-intercept was 4, 0. And we said our y-intercept was 0, -4/3, -1.33. If I divide 4 by 3, I get the decimal 1.33. So -4/3 is -1.33. Remember, in my math lab, don't choose any other points except your intercepts. If your intercept happens to be at 0, 0, then you just choose 0, 0, and whatever other point is on the line, because you do need 2 points and there was only one intercept, right? So maybe choose that one and any other point on your line, and it will graph the line for you. But make sure if you have 2 intercepts, 2 separate X and Y intercepts, that those are the points you use to graph. All right. So that's example 1. Example 2, we're doing the exact same thing, okay? Now we have it set equal to Y. It doesn't need to be set equal to Y, but... Oh, and it says graph it. So graph it by finding and plotting its intercepts. We graphed it on Desmos, but you can then, just to make sure you know it, right? X is 4, so I need to go out 4. Down 2. We said 4, 0 will be right here. And then we need 0, -4/3. Good. All right, example 2 says graph 2x equals y by finding and plotting its intercepts. This is the same as y equals 2x, if that's easier for you to look at. It's easier for me to look at that way. So plotting its intercepts means its x-intercept and its y-intercept. This usually means that there will be 2 points. Sometimes there will be 3, right? 1, 2, 3. And if you have something that looks like this graph, there will only be one intercept. It will just be 0, 0. Okay, that is possible. That is both the x-intercept and the y-intercept, because x is 0 for this one and y is 0 for this one. Your x-intercept is where y is 0, and your y-intercept is where x is 0. So again, we're just going to find our x-intercept, and we're going to find our y-intercept of y equals 2x. It doesn't matter which one you start with. Whichever one looks easier, right? So our graph was y equals 2x. I think, oh, I wrote it in this column, so I have to say y equals 0. Right? Because I wrote it in the x-intercept column. If it's in the x-intercept column, y has to be 0. But you can start over here. Y equals 2x, x is 0. That's kind of seems easier, right? Because 2 times 0 is 0. So y equals 2 times 0. Y equals 0 when, right? X is 0. So my coordinate point for x0, y0, sorry, x0, y0 is just 0, 0. Good. Now, because I found that when x is 0, y is 0, I think I'm going to find here that when y is 0, x is 0, right? So y equals 2x becomes 0 equals 2x, right? I replaced my y with 0. It was y equals 2x. So now it's 0 equals 2x. I still need to solve for x, okay? X is being multiplied by 2, so I'm going to divide it by 2. Just because it's 0 doesn't mean we stop doing math to it. Your calculator will tell you when you can't do math with 0, okay? If it was 2 divided by 0, that would be a problem. But 0 divided by 2 is okay. Okay? 0 divided by 2 just takes us to 0. So x is equal to 0 when y is equal to 0. So we didn't need to, once you see 0, 0, I mean, it's in this class, once you see 0, 0, that is your intercept if it's a linear equation. So x is 0, y is 0. My x-intercept and my y-intercept are 0, 0. But remember, you still need to find another point because you need 2 points to figure out what your line is. So my line goes through the point 0, 0. But I need one more point. And now you can make a table. What is y equals 2x when x is, and you can put it whatever you want except 0, right? We already know that one. We already know the point 0, 0. So don't use x is 0, but use anything else. All right, x is 1 or x is -1 just to keep it simple. Y equals 2, but we decided that x is 1. So now it's 2 times 1, which is 2. So when x is 1, y is 2. Everybody okay with that? When I put 1 in for x, 1 times 2 is 2. So my point is x is 1, y is 2. And again, I can choose any point. It could have been 1. It could have been -1. That's also okay. Y equals 2 times -1, which is -2. So another point will be -1, -2. Okay? Does not matter what point you choose. I would just recommend an easy one. So 1 on x, 2 on y is going to be up here. -1 on x, -2 on y is going to be down here. But remember, you can only plot 2 points on MyMathLab, and you need to plot your intercept if it asks for intercept. And then you'll just draw it like that. Any questions? So that was just because I need more than 1 point to graph a line, and I can choose any x value I want. All right, then we're going to talk about vertical and horizontal lines. Remember, the vertical line is your y-axis. Confusingly, the y-axis is when x is equal to 0, right? That's what we learned today. Horizontal, like the horizon or the sunrise. Sunrise is over the horizon. I don't know why that's how I remember it. That's your x-axis. On your x-axis, y is always 0. All right, so vertical is your y-axis, up and down. Horizontal is your x-axis, side to side. The graph of x equals c is a vertical line. Okay, remember your y-axis is x equals 0. Your y-axis is x equals 0. So x equals any number is going to be a vertical line. So here's x equals 0. I'm going to graph it. X equals 0. All right. Every value of y gives me back x equals 0. I'm going to do another one. The one they gave us, I'm just going to change the color to accentuate it, is x equals 2. It looks like it to me. Okay. Because for every y value, x is 2. If y on this line, if y is 2, x is 2. If y is -4, x is still 2. That's why it's always going to be x is 2. You don't even have a y value, okay? It's not x is 2y or 2 plus y, it's just x is 2. This is x is 0 because this is the point. Sorry. I did that wrong. 2, -4. Because it's x first and then y. Good. This one would be 2 I don't know. 7 maybe? So here we have the point 0, 4. Maybe here is 0, -6. Good. For every value of y, x is 0 on that line. So that's a vertical line if we just say x equals a number, okay? C is a real number, and the x-intercept is, here it would be 2, 0, here it would be 0, 0, right? Horizontal lines, on the other hand, we said our x-axis is where y is equal to 0. So this line is where y equals 0. Okay, so that one is 2, 0. This one is -2, 0. This one is negative, I don't know, 10, 0. Just making that up. Okay. So the graph of y equals c, like a number, here it is -4. Y equals -4. So this is the graph of x equals +2. Here's the graph of y equals -4. Okay. And the y-intercept is at 0, -4 in this case. All right, let's look on Desmos. We said, let's use x is 5. Good. Y is 5. Do you see how for this one, every value of x is 5? 2, 5, 4, 5, -6, 5. Here, every value of y is 5. X is 5. 5, 2, 5, 0, 5, -2, approximately. Good. So x is 5 is there. X is 0 is here. X is -1 is here. Okay. If it's an x, it's just going to be a vertical line. If we change this to y, then it becomes a horizontal line. Now y is 0. Now y is -1. Okay. So if it's y, it's a horizontal line, just like the x-axis. If it's x equals, it's a vertical line, just like the y-axis. All right. So for example 3. Ooh, and then just sorry, just to add more, y equals mx plus b. Don't worry about what m and b are. M is your slope and b is your constant or your y-intercept. This is going to be a slanted line. It's going to be slanted in some way if it contains x and y. If your graph, if your equation has x and y values, or sorry, x and y in it, right? If your equation has x and y, it will cross the x-intercept, or sorry, the x-axis and the y-axis. Okay. If your equation only has x, it will only cross the x-axis. If your equation only has y, it will only ever cross the y-axis. It will never cross the x-axis, okay? So when you see x equals -3, because this is really easy to confuse, right? We're teaching both of these at the same time. They seem like the same thing, but they're not the same thing, but they're very easy to confuse, right? Because we're just doing them back to back. And the only difference is an x or a y value. So They're asking us to graph x equals -3. So find, here's your x-axis, -3 on my x-axis. So this is -3, 0. Good. It doesn't have a y, so I know it can't be a slanted line. It has to be a straight line. It has an x, it will cross the x-axis. Okay. Or it passes through the x-axis at -3. If I was to make a table, this is how I make tables, right? Choose an x, put it in my equation, find y. Good. X is -1. It's just not true. It's not possible, right? X can only be -3. And then when I replace -3, X is -3. Y can be anything, right? All real numbers. So you can't even make a table, right? There's no table to be made. It's just I only have X values. When Y is, ooh, I can make a Y table. That'll be more clear, right? X is -3. What are my X and Y? So I'll make a Y table when Y is 0. X is -3, so my point is -3, 0. When Y is -5, X is -3, so it's -3, -5. Good. No matter what Y value I put in, X will always be -3. If I put in 1, it'll be -3, 1. If I put in 2, it'll be -3, 2. Make sense? So -3, 0, -3, -5, -3, 1. It just means it crosses the x-axis at -3, no matter what my y value is. Our last one is graph y equals 3. Where is y equals 3? Right here, right? X is -3 is on my x-axis. Y is 3 is on my y-axis. Good. If I make a table, let's pick a small number, 0. If x equals 0, y is still 3, so it's 0, 3. If x is 1, y is still equal to 3. Didn't change that at all. 1, 3. Okay, so I have 0, 3, and now I have 1, 3. And that's my line. Good. All right. This, let me, since I have a few minutes. This may also show up as, what could this show up as? Y plus 3 equals 0. Okay. Solve for y. Oh, if I wanted it to equal this, right? It would be y minus 3 equals 0. Yeah. Solve for y, so I'll add 3 to both sides. 0 plus 3 is 3. Y equals 3. All right. So if you have something like x plus 4 equals 0, just solve for x. Solve for whatever, solve for y, but if you don't have a y, you can solve for x. So I'll subtract 4, x equals -4, and then graph it. Okay.